Hi everybody, it's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, The Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Co-host Dr. Sasha Lessin, and today we interview Barrie-Gellis, who is a former member of Jane Roberts' ESP class in Elmira. He's one of the New York boys and was referred to as our poet by Seth in 1972. He has written more than 4,000 poems and has published a volume of poetry called Outside is a Secret Key, which is available at AOL.com for a signed paperback or as an ebook via Kindle on Amazon. It is a collection of 100 poems that relate to experiencing inner and outer life, including Seth concepts, as well as poems that Sue Watkins included in her book, Conversations with Seth. Barrie has a book coming out in Germany and Switzerland called The Seth Worldview, Questions and Answers, Essays and Poems. On tonight's show, Barrie will discuss what Seth class in Elmira, New York was like, and his take on whatever metaphysical, spiritual, and or Seth's concepts come up, which may include death, the afterlife, probable realities, dreams, and simultaneous time, and so forth. Let's see what else. He's giving presentations on Seth, and we're going to talk about, today we're going to focus on the alien connection, amongst other things. Dr. Lessin, and there's a lot more on aquarianradio.com. I have a whole page on today's show and a bio for for Barrie, and more information on Seth and Jane Roberts and pictures and all kinds of good stuff. Dr. Lessin, Sasha, what would you like to say?
Well, Barrie, I'm hoping that you'll give me the Cliff Notes summary, the first paragraph or so early on, so I can really get the context of whose worldview it is and what value it is for us.
Okay, Barrie-Gellis.
Yes, it was
Go ahead.
Hard to hear. Do you want the Seth's worldview, sort of a quick summary of Seth's worldview, or?
I would. Yes. Oh, that would be so cool.
Well, I don't know. That's not what you asked, but okay. Well,
yeah.
Seth's worldview it's not like it's so wide ranging, because anything that happens really in life or whatever, Seth touches upon it. And his concepts about you create your own reality. He kind of started that New Age concept back in the mid-1960s when he first started coming through Jane in like 1963 or 64. And then, it kind of grew and people picked up on it later. I would say the most... I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that's it. You create your own reality.
Yeah, but
Would be
there'd be
one.
more than that a little bit. I'll put that together. What to me was the most important Seth concept, and to me it was twofold. It was the fact that you create your own reality. That's like your thoughts, your beliefs, your expectations, and that attracts to you people and events that you then kind of co-create the event with, making like telepathic agreements along the way. And this is sort of covered by what they call The Secret. That's came out a while ago. The Secret is how the law of attraction and stuff. So, but Seth, so that's part of it. That's reality creation. But the second part of The Secret, and I call it the full secret. But the second half is that in our reality creation, we're supposed to help and not harm others. It's not just abundance, and you could get a car and you have a house. It's not just that you can have things, but it's that in your reality creation, we're to help and not harm others. And the reason why we want to do that, the twofold. Well, one reason would be, according to Seth, and I agree, is that in order to leave the reincarnational cycle behind, you have to learn how to not harm. You have to learn how to create in a responsible manner, to not to help and not harm others, and because in other realities, reality creation is much more intense and instantaneous. And the reason why also is that we're acting in harmony with our nature. Our nature, according to Seth, is loving, compassionate, and good. And we're here to act in harmony or in accordance with that nature. And if we act in that manner, in accordance with our own nature, we would naturally find joy in helping others and in not harming others. And so our responsibility is really not to help others, because then we could build resentments and not understand why. But our responsibility is really to understand ourselves and to do. This kind of sounds weird, and it could be very selfish sounding, and I think it's been misunderstood. But it's to do what makes you happy. But in so doing that, if you're really exploring yourself and understanding yourself, it'll naturally make you happy when you are helping others and not harming others. Not simply, as I said, getting a new car and a house and stuff like that. And the major message of The Secret stops with that first half. Reality creation and abundance. You can get whatever you want, and it doesn't go into the more important aspect of it, which is the helping and not harming others. So putting everything together, that's it for me. I see that as the most important aspect, meaning or whatever. And built into that is just the idea that people are loving, good, and compassionate. I mean, that in itself could be revolutionary in a way. If people really believe that, it would be very hard to go to war and to hurt other people, because they're not the monsters that are, whoever the leaders are trying to get us to believe they are, in boot camp and all those things. But if people are good, people you don't want to harm good people. You want to harm bad people. Or if you believe you're bad, then you'll say, well, it's okay to me to do things that are wrong because I'm bad anyway. So there's a lot of deep-rooted ramifications to the belief that people are good. And that was also a major part, to me, a major part of the Seth material. And there was other things, simultaneous time, or any other things, you might want to ask about. But that was it for now. So,
Are y'all there, Janet?
I think she fainted with the wisdom that was the ideas.
It's showing I'm still here. Something must have happened.
But there was the concept of, like we're as dead right now as we'll ever be, that the present is the point of power. These are different kind of ideas, that are kind of slogans of ideas. And I don't understand. I kind of know who Seth is. Could you explain to the listeners who he is? Yeah, sure. Seth he's like a I don't know, a personality without doesn't need the body anymore. He's like, he was channeled through Jane Roberts, who at those days were called a medium. And he's like a guardian, an oversoul, a whole self. I'm not sure what term, but he's been through all the reincarnational cycles, and supposedly is here now to give us help and guidance. I would say, and as I said, he spoke through Jane from '63 to 1984, and
Well, Janet and Sasha are having trouble with their microphone. They're on a brand new system, so it's kind of messed up. And I'm just a producer.
Oh, okay, hi, producer. Well, do you have any questions? Since you don't know anything about Seth or a little bit, that'll be good. You could ask some questions or anything you don't understand.
Now you say he came to deliver a message to mankind that we need to.
Yeah.
It's when you help others, you help yourself. But when you help yourself,
Yeah.
you're helping others too, without harming them. Is what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying also that you want to, not just if you help yourself, you help others, but that when anybody on the planet is in need or starving or hungry, a part of all of us are starving and hungry, and that the world problems are here for us to help others. It's not just, it is true that if you help yourself, you help others, but that's just one, I would say, small aspect of it. I guess an important aspect, but it's also outright helping others that are who need help. It could be very simple. I mean, from starting, somebody can't reach something in a supermarket aisle, he could reach up and he can get it for the person. Helping people who are in need, you walk by, to not partaking in events or situations that cause a great deal of harm, to the degree you can.
We totally lost them then. Now they're coming back. Maybe that'll reset for them. I had no idea that you were the guest until about an hour and a half ago. So
here I am.
I didn't expect to be doing the interviews.
I see.
But no, I haven't heard of you now and heard of Seth.
You heard of Seth, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Seth, Jane used to have what they called Seth classes in Elmira, and that's where people gathered in her living room, and Seth would come through and talk to us, and so I was one of those original members of the Seth class there. And so we would talk to each other, and then Seth would come through and join the conversation, and it was a very, as you can imagine, interesting experience. And my friends and I, we drove up there from New York to Elmira, which is about each week, which is about a 5-hour drive each way.
I think I was producing a show with Janet when you were on the last time. Weren't you doing some readings?
Am I doing what?
Weren't you doing some readings on people or something?
Civilian?
Readings. Having Seth talk to him?
No.
Oh, it must have been somebody else. I apologize.
Yeah. But no, that's all right. Because there are people today who claim that they are speaking for Seth now. Seth, Jane died in 1984, and throughout his whole time when he was around, he said he would never try to communicate to anyone else because he didn't want to contaminate the material. He wanted to maintain the integrity of his material and his work with Jane. And he said he would never communicate to anyone else. And while Jane was still alive, people contacted her and said, Jane, Seth spoke to me and he did this in the dream state, automatic writing. He told me this. And each and every person, Seth said, I did not communicate through anyone else, and I won't, because Jane is the only person my work is going to come through. So everybody will know, the authenticity of the work.
Hi, Kara.
And then hi.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I was saying how Seth said he would only speak through Jane, only communicate through Jane. And then, while he was alive, while Jane was alive, he told everybody else that he would only communicate, that wasn't him. And he said people are going to use him and his name as a symbol for their own inner communication. But after Jane died, a number of people started saying, "Oh, Seth is now communicating through me," and it's just it's not the case, because Seth over and over repeated he would not communicate through anyone else because he wanted to maintain the integrity of the material, and to suddenly decide, oh well, I don't mind about the integrity of the material, because you have 10 people who to be Seth and he have Seth quotes or true Seth quotes. Over a period of time, nobody would know who's Seth, what's the real Seth, they'll contradict each other, So whoever was on claiming to be speaking for Seth and letting Seth speak to people, according to Seth, that wouldn't be happening. Because he said he's never going to speak, he'll never communicate with anyone else.
Well, Janet, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yes,
I can hear you.
So Seth couldn't carry it on.
It didn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense. It didn't make sense that Seth would change his mind, because it's not something that is a mystical idea. It's a very practical, common idea. He's not suddenly going to want his work compromised. He's not, after 20 years of saying, of being very concerned with distortion and saying I will never speak to anyone else. I want to maintain the integrity of my work. To suddenly say, oh, who cares about the integrity of my work? I don't care about if the authenticity of what I say, and I don't care if there's distortions and contradictions. I mean, it would just go against, everything that he did for 20 years, and what would be gained from it? Nothing. Weaker material that would just confuse the original work that he was, I guess you could say, proud of. And he also said he only could come through Jane because of his reincarnational connections to Jane and Rob, her husband. That the three of them were connected. They had like the same, I guess, oversoul or something. They were all connected, and it was because of that connection he was able to come through her. And anyway, but to say that Seth would suddenly, after Jane died, not care about all of his work and put out material that contradicts it and that's not as good and is, at best is similar, but it just makes no sense. Because as I said, if there were like 20 people pretending to be Janet, like pretending to be you or me, and they started posting and writing books, and people started quoting, well, Janet said this, Janet said that. Eventually, it's all going to get mixed together, and it's just that's ruining the integrity of the material. And somebody would look at the, the material, the Janet material, or, the Barrie material, whoever, and say, this is all, a bunch of contradictory hogwash, it's all mishmash.
And there's another interesting perspective is that perhaps there's, like the fractile of every being there is in each of us, and so that when you each take, to take it away from Seth for a minute, when we all say, what's your concept of Jesus, the Jesus in your heart, what is that person like? You'll get all kinds of variations, and so what it is, it's the fractile of that archetype, but each person's seeing it from their perspective. And so in a way, you could look at all these other different sets as trying to contribute something through their own geniuses, which is different,
Well, yeah, but let me say two things about that. Two things. First of all, everybody has their own Seth, by whatever name. Seth isn't a unique type of a thing, like Jesus was supposed to be like a unique being, godlike being. Everybody would have access to this inner information, and interpret it. And but the claiming that it's the personality of Seth, who said for 20 years he would not communicate to anyone else. When it just doesn't make sense. Seth said that people will use his name as a symbol for their own inner communication. And when you mistake a symbol and you don't realize it's a symbol, you think it's a fact. But everybody can and does have these inner communications with their higher self, or I'm not sure what you want to call it. but it's not like kind of piggybacking on Seth's name. Not that the people, I'm not sure saying these people are doing it to be, in a malignant way. I mean, I don't know, But what were you going to say, Janet?
I was going to say I read a series of books called Messages from Michael by Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough, and Michael was oversold. I'm going to eat the mic. I read a series of books by Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough called Messages from Michael, and the Michael group was, and so they were different. They operated differently, where they had a Ouija board, and it could be a different person each week running the board, and a different person each week recording what was coming through the board. So I think that I'm not sure what Seth is. If he is he an individual or an oversoul of a group? That's one question I have. And what your point is that he told his people through Jane that she was going to be the other voice, and once she was gone, that was going to be it. Is that what I'm getting? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's hard to hear you for some reason. You sound half underwater. But I think there's something about Michael. There are others. There's a person named Michael and Elias and Abraham. There's a lot of different entities that come through.
Mm-hmm.
And those would be connected to whatever that person, that medium. But I'm specifically only talking about those who are claiming that it's Seth that's coming through. Mm-hmm. Nobody claimed a Seth coming through until Jane Roberts started doing the work. Then suddenly, all these people were saying that they're hearing from Seth. And while Jane was alive and Seth was still around, time and again, people had wrote Jane, and Seth, responded, "It wasn't me. It's not going to be me. I'm only going to communicate through Jane in order to maintain the integrity of the work."
Mm-hmm.
And he said it, consistently. And after Jane died, there was absolutely no reason. I mean, he knew Jane was going to die. Everybody dies. There would be no reason to say, well, I don't care anymore about the work. I don't care if there's, distortions, and I don't care if I contradict myself. And, because people are not going to all say the same thing. It's going to be contradictions. And that's what Seth called, he didn't want to ruin the integrity of his work. And, some people just come along.
Seth quit with Jane, and so let's get back to what Seth's message was, because all we have now is what he said through Jane.
No, to be ahimsa. That was the other half of it, harmlessness.
Right. So when we left, we were talking about harmlessness and helping others and doing no harm to others. So that's one of the questions I had before we got booted off. And during the break, we're going to try to reconnect with the computer.
Yeah, it's hard for me to hear
you. It might
you.
be a better sound.
I just have a few.
Can you hear Sasha?
It's hard for me to hear
go ahead,
you.
Then.
I just have a very few, like some quotes that are just a sentence long about, but it was something said about love in the universe that is a good background to why we wouldn't want to harm others, like naturally, we wouldn't harm others. And it's basically because of, can I read a few of those, or should I not?
Oh, please do. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I'd love to hear.
There's a couple. Okay. There's 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll read one. He says, we are innately. Here's what it says. I'm sorry. This is 71. He says, the innate love within you forms the planet that you know, the physical bodies that you inhabit, the seasons, and the reality in which you presently have your existence. And the next one, they're short, very short. Love is the basis for any reality that any consciousness knows. If it were not for love, then you would not have the planet that you know. All consciousness, of whatever extent, feels love, for love is the basis of all existence. Next quote, love exists without an object. It is the impetus by which all being becomes manifest. And 2 more. Love has a biological as well as a spiritual basis that forms the basis of all life. And then the last little one, love is a biological necessity operating in all biological life. Without love, there is no physical commitment to life, no psychic hold. So those are the
thank you. Those were wonderful. Yes, love is a natural unity of everything. Yes. So
that's in our nature. We
the
are
center
of the
of the heart.
universe.
Yes.
And our nature is love, compassion, and goodness. And according to Seth, human beings have a built-in mechanism that we created for ourselves. And he calls, this is a concept that most people don't really understand or even know. It's called violations and natural guilt, and that confuses a lot of people, just those words. But when you understand that, what he was talking about, it makes total sense, tying it into love like that. Because natural guilt is not, like you feel guilty because you didn't go to church on Sunday. But according to Seth, natural guilt is this inner, intuition we have or feeling that comes into play in the pause of reflection before we repeat a harmful act. It's like an inner tugging that's telling us, not to do it again. And the violation is not violating other people, but it's violating your own nature. So our nature is love, compassion, and goodness. And when you violate your own nature of that, we have a feeling of natural guilt, is what he called it, to tug us not to repeat the harmful act. So
it's our inner assessor, the part of us that can, before we act, assess whether that will be harmful or not.
Yeah, and we need linear time for that. In order to learn not to harm others and to help others, we needed physical reality with all the traits of physical reality. We already had non-physical reality. We could fly and nothing could really be destroyed. But in physical reality, we have vulnerability. Matter could be destroyed and people could be hurt. And you also have linear time, which has a time lag to it. So everything is an instant. So we think to do something, and there's a pause, and there's a reflection, and there's also time, between, reality creation of attracting certain events to us. So we needed physical reality. It's very important. It's not something, it's just here to hold us down, or we just have to realize it's an illusion, or all of those things. It's its own significant aspect of the greater reality that serves an important purpose, which is to have us, learn to move on and to leave the reincarnational stage behind, and to move on to other realities.
Wow.
So, and
terrific
that love
stuff. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and so love, understanding why we wouldn't want to harm anybody, is because it's natural to us. That's why Seth and others say, what's your responsibility? You're only responsible to yourself. You're only responsible to, do what makes you happy. Do what's fun. But that's only looked at the surface. Oh, okay, to do it fun, so I could do whatever I want. I could have 10 cars. I could blah, 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 blah. But the responsibility is also to understand yourself, to be aware. And once you start understanding yourself, then you will naturally find joy in helping others. And you'll naturally find joy in not harming others. And you won't be doing it as an obligation, which could build a resentment. If you don't understand why I have to help these people and I don't want to, and I have to do this and I just resent them, and why are they so needy? But when you realize this is a choice that you're making because it's fun, there's something, and it's fun because it's your nature, and it's fun to act in harmony with yourself and to be your, authentic self. So when the message is given, be yourself, or, do what's fun, it doesn't just end there. That's really just the first part. But most people just stop there. That's it. Just have fun, think of yourself. They turn it into a very selfish thing in a negative sense, because they're not either being told or realizing the depth of it, the next step of it. And I set aside, again, I don't know if it's too much on the radio, a few quotes that said about helping others. If I could read those short
here's
ones.
some more. Yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes, do.
Okay, I'll do one. This is from different times. This one's from 1984. It goes, the point is that all of the world's problems also represent great challenges. Young people in particular are needed to take up the tasks of deregulating and redistributing food sources and of encouraging nations to join in such a creative venture. Those are worthy and stirring causes as noble as any that graced any generation in the past. The world needs every hand and eye and cries out for expression of love and caring. Okay, that's the longest. There's a few more. Some are very short, like this one. Mm-hmm. This is from 1970. You are now dwelling in physical reality. It behooves you to help others. When you take from others, you take from yourselves. When you give to others, you give to yourselves. And here's the next one. It says, you cannot say the poor are poor simply because they chose poverty, and therefore there's no need for me to help them. This attitude can easily draw poverty to you in the next experience. 3 more short ones. When it is possible, it is not only wise, but advantageous to help any living creature, regardless of its stature in your scheme of things. And then it goes, the race suffers when any of its members die of starvation or disease, even as a whole plant suffers if a group of its leaves are unhappy. In the same way, all members of the species are benefited by the happiness, health, and fulfillment of those individuals who compose it. And I have...
Wow.
I could read a few more, or...
Oh, yes,
right?
Keep going. I love it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then
I'll read a few more. There's only
comments.
3 more left of these.
Go ahead.
4 more. Actually, 4 more. But I'll just read them, and you
Okay.
could stop if you want. It goes, good intent is apparent within your world. It is obvious in the cooperative ventures that unite, say, the mineral, plant, and animal kingdoms, the relationship of a bee to a flower. And your beliefs to the contrary, you have closed your minds to man's cooperative nature, to his innate desire for fellowship, his natural bent to taking care of others, and for altruistic behavior. And a few more now we have for this. It goes, when you are truly and completely yourselves, you will not hurt others. You will be individual and yourself. And being truly individual will mean that there's no need to hurt another. And then the last one. If you allow your spontaneity its own freedom, then you can quite happily have whatever you want. But spontaneity will also lead you to thoughts of love for others. It will lead you to realize that you cannot plunder your planet. And it will lead you to realize that as long as one person is starving, then you are starving in ways that you are too ignorant to recognize. And that last part, that last part, the last one about the one I just read, that was a very interesting, conversation in class, because it was the closest that came to what people talk about the law of attraction today and the way they talk about it. Because somebody in class was saying, so Seth, do you mean that I can have as many houses as I want, and as many cars as I want? I could just, I don't have to worry about the people starving in China, I think who said at the time, whatever the expression was. You know, and Seth said, you say, if I make myself happy, then I'll make everybody happy. And Seth said, I can't even follow your reasoning. And then they had a conversation back and forth, and it ended with that. If you allow your spontaneity, spontaneity was saying to me, well, just do whatever you want. So if you allow your spontaneity its own freedom, then you can quite happily have whatever you want, like this person was saying, you can have a house, a car. But spontaneity will also lead you to thoughts of love for others. It will lead you to realize that you cannot plunder your planet. And it will lead you to realize that as long as one person is starving, then you are starving in ways that you are too ignorant to recognize. And that's the second half of The Secret, where people talk about The Secret all over the place, like this past decade.
Mm-hmm.
They don't talk about the second half, about helping others and not harming others. They stop with this person in class stop. Oh, so I could just have whatever I want. I'll make other people. I heard someone say, if you want to help other people, you model abundance. So buy more cars, have more houses, and you're modeling abundance. This is what somebody, not a sad person, but it's what the person in class was kind of saying. And it's just finding ways around being nice, ways around your own love and compassion. I think people are afraid of that. It makes maybe them feel vulnerable themselves. It makes them feel guilty, But I could be a caring person if I get 2 more cars. But that's not
So
what it's all
Barry,
about.
can you hear me, Barry? I'm not asking
I'm trying my best. I just said, can you hear me, Barry?
Okay. Did Seth address war and some ways to resolve war?
War? Yeah.
Go ahead, say it, Sasha. You can hear you better.
A few ways, because I remember on one of the classes that I was in was all about that. And that's where, one thing, because I said it was a class, and at the time the Vietnam War was going on. And there were like young people, like my friends and I were kind of like the young hippies from New York, Queens. And then Elmira is like a conservative part of New York, upstate New York. So there's this generation gap going about there. So we were talking about war, the Vietnam War, and so I was saying, well, why do people just kill each other? Why can't they just wake up and go about their day? And summarizing everything now, the answer, because from that, Seth gave us an assignment, like, what do you think the world would be like if you really believed you were good? And what I got from all that years later and then was one way to stop war is the belief. You have believing that you're good and people are good. With that belief, you'll start acting in ways that are good, because if you don't think you're good, you'll do things, everybody does what they think is okay to do. Even if it's wrong, they'll say, well, it's okay to do, like littering. I litter sometimes. Not a major litter, but I litter sometimes. And I'll say, well, it's wrong, but it's okay because it's only it's only, a gum wrapper or something. So everybody justifies what they do. Nobody does what they don't justify. There's a reason. I'll rob this guy on the street. He doesn't need the money. I need it more than him. Maybe you're not supposed to steal, but in this case, it's okay. So if you though believe you're good and that others are good, you can't justify hurting them. You can't justify sacrificing yourself to some cause. Either committing murder or suicide in the process. So that was one way. And the other way, he said, and it can only happen one by one, is you have to put down the weapons. You have, and unilaterally, he said the United States unilaterally disarmed, other nations would follow. And one of the conservative people up there said, well, I hope you tell that to the Chinese and the Russian, the enemy, I think she said. And he said they don't need us, Seth, to tell them that. But, that's the way it's going to come. And he said, if you want peace, you got to vote for people who believe in peace, not who believe in war. So it's like a little miraculous process of changing one by one and not partaking and justifying all the mass murder and slaughter that's going on, in the name of war, and don't hate war but love peace. And spread that message.
I agree with you 100%. Right on. I love what you said.
And spread it. Spread it to somebody at work. Spread it to your neighbor, your son, your friend, and one by one like that. And maybe as I said, meanwhile, voting for people who support peace, at least more. Start wherever you can. But that was the answer that he gave. Those few, about believing that people are good and you're good. and vote for people who believe in peace. And you got to put down your guns. You don't, as long as one mother sends one son off to war. In those days, the women didn't go. There'll be war, he said. And he also said, what was interesting, a lot of the people in the peace movement from the 60s were people who were killed in World War II and came back because they realized how horrible war was, to try to put an end to war. Because back in the 60s, then, it wasn't just that, and there was a number of people who were against, like the Vietnam War. It's a bad war. But more than that, there were a number of people that don't even seem to exist today, not in numbers. I'm sure they do. It's just war. It wasn't like the Vietnam War is bad. Just war itself is wrong. And that was, a message of a lot of the peace movement, the hippie people back in that time. A lot of that got lost today. And you don't hear people really talking today about it. Some people you do. But most people can say, well, this is a bad war, but war itself is, good.
Mm-hmm. So what did Seth say about extraterrestrials?
Okay, I was looking this up to really give good, deeper answers to, because Seth, unfortunately, didn't have just one place where, that's what he talked about for the whole book. So I went around and I went through the different things, and I found different things he said at different times. And the first mention I found of it was in 1963. When Jane first got Seth through the Ouija board. She was writing a book on ESP because she didn't really believe in it and stuff, but she was exploring different things like the Ouija board and other things there were. But Seth came through on the Ouija board. And in 1963, they asked, has Earth been visited by alien life? And Seth's answer then was constantly. So that was back in 63. He said that it's constantly visited. Then he goes, sometimes on purpose, sometimes on accident. But he said, there were so many interesting things that he said, and I'm trying to look over my notes here at the same time. So I have to say what comes into my mind more. Like when he talked about it I think it was in 1972, he was talking about the pyramids. I'm saying the date because if you know more about UFOs and those things, I know something about it because I did a UFO show on cable TV for about 4 years, and I had some really good guests, my wife and I. Willie Strieber was a guest, the head of MUFON at the time, the creator, Willie Andrus, he was a guest. There was the guys who wrote this book called Clear Intent. Anyway, so it's not like I don't know about UFOs and stuff. I was always interested in it, but I don't know. It's not my field of expertise. So I mentioned the date because I'm interested myself. Certain things that are said, like were they said before? Certain other things were said, or was it? Like for like the example, he said. He talks about that space travel is going to be an inner, and it's like going to be an inner. How did he word it? A light trance. This is talk about space travel. This is in 1964, so it's like 44 years ago. I don't know how many years ago it was. 64, 74, 84, 94, 04, 14. How long? Anyway, 64. 50 years ago. So I don't know. He said about space travel.
52 years ago. Yes, go
ahead. He said,
what about space travel?
He said, the vehicle of so-called space travel is mental and psychic mobility in terms of psychic transformation of energy, enabling spontaneous and instantaneous mobility through the spacious present. As to the means, the very simplest and crudest, but still to be adopted method will prove to be, and this is the first stage, he said, hypnotism. Simply because at this point, your personalities will not trust their own abilities and must rely upon suggestions from the outside. And then he goes, a light trance state, self-induced, can yield excellent results in a subject who is trained along these lines. as I have said, so-called space travel will be mainly divorced from vehicles. And then he talks about like what happened in Star Trek later, a beaming aboard, but this is in 64. He says it will be discovered that the inner senses represent your only long-lasting method of such travel. In space travel, for example, you are not going to be seen flying through the air like some gray-haired eagle. Your journey will simply not be through space, since space is a camouflage. And he talks about, I don't know where it is here, how you reassemble, you'll be able to reassemble yourself physically in another location. Or maybe it's over here. This is 64. When you realize that the self has no boundaries, then you can begin to make progress. Since consciousness, to begin with, does not exist in space, there's no reason why the consciousness cannot so expand. When so-called space travel becomes truly popular, truly practical, it will come along these lines. The self will truly utilize the atoms and molecules. The consciousness will travel by this method. Consciousness comes first and forms the physical body. You will learn that it is possible through no physical act, and he says, underline, no physical act. So you will learn that it is possible through no physical act to relinquish the physical body, expand the self using atoms and molecules as stepping stones to a given destination, and reforming the physical body at the other end. So ultimately, that's how this is talking there. So ultimately, he's saying we're going to mess with vehicles and we're going to try to do it mechanically, and then we're going to realize we could have done it all along mentally, using the inner senses. And it's kind of, to me, it sounds like on Star Trek when they beam the board, they beam to another planet. But he's saying, this is before Star Trek. This is 64. Star Trek didn't come out yet. But he's saying you're not going to need that. You're not going to need. We're going to have to learn to travel through time. Now we travel through space, and when we think about going long distances, we're traveling like the surface of the universe. But he says,
well, the Moody Blues who were contactees said you can fly. Thinking is the best way to travel. You fly high as a kite if you want to, faster than light if you want to, speeding through rivers.
Okay, I couldn't. I'm sorry. I can't.
On craft.
I can't. I couldn't hear that. But
let's try this again. Hold on.
I was going to also say though, Seth said we are going to be through telepathy is how we're going to have our first real contact. Back, in 64, he said telepathy is going to be a method of contact with aliens, the best method. Because you don't.
So we were talking about the. Hear us? Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
We were talking. Yeah, we were talking about the song, the Moody Blues, which I think they were contactees, and I think they were on to something. They were just trying to tell us through song and music. Repeat what they said, and then I have something to say.
Thinking is the best way to travel. You can fly high as a kite if you want to, faster than light if you want to, speeding through the universe.
Yeah, thinking is the best way to travel. So the book, the book, The Emerald Tablet by the god Thoth, said that he encountered the interdimensional watchers, extraterrestrial, in the halls of Amenti, and they taught him how to break himself down into his cellular molecular structure, which he was holding together by his mind. And in the book, he said he traveled through time and space, and then he came back and reconstituted his form into 3D physicality. So we have other accounts of what Seth was explaining to us.
And we travel, every night we travel to different planets into time and space or whatever. We're just not aware of it. And we're still in the bed. I'm not saying we disappear from our bed, but we naturally have this ability, and we naturally do it, I believe. And one of the
things... Or maybe we're already there and we just realize it. We're already there. We don't travel. We're already there.
Yeah. And, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, that book, he said a perfect speed is being there. And he talked about the speed of thought, traveling the speed of thought. In that book. So, it's like, do you ever Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach? It's a great. It's like The Little Prince. It's like that type of a book.
Yes, we heard that. Okay, yeah. What else? What other references to extraterrestrials did Seth have?
All right. There was something called Seth 2, like the Seth and Seth 2. Seth 2 came through Jane also, and sort of, according to Seth, there's no way we can understand Seth 2. Seth has to translate Seth 2. Seth 2's never physical, and like whatever Seth is to us, that's what Seth 2 would be to Seth. And the Seth 2 people, or whatever it is, said things, that were really amazing. And this ties into Seth said a few things that tie into the ancient astronaut theory. This is part of that. I'll read a little quote I found about that. This is Seth 2 speaking. Now, again, Seth 2 was never physical in the first place according to this. He says, and this is Seth sort of channeling Seth 2. Seth is translating Seth 2, and Jane is speaking. We gave you the pattern by which your physical selves are formed. We gave you the pattern by which you learn your physical reality. We gave you the patterns, intricate, evolved, and blessed, from which you form the reality of each physical thing you know. The most minute cell within your brain has been made from the patterns of consciousness which we have given you. We gave you the pattern upon which you formed your entire physical universe and the comprehension that exists within each cell, the knowledge that each cell, C-E-L-L, that each cell has, the desire for organization was given by us. The entire woodwork was initiated by us. We taught you to form the reality that you know. That was in 1969. And that's Seth 2 speaking. And so, and he said things like, with the watchers, we watch, we care about you. There's other quotes, other Seth 2 quotes. He said, we feed your universe. And
so you're saying he mentioned watchers, which we've heard about from other people as well. So you're saying he's mentioning the watchers who they take care of us and they love us, right?
Yeah, that was, again, let me find it. I try to gather these things together as best I could.
Yeah, we're having trouble hearing you now, so...
No, I can heard it a little bit. I'm seeing quotes if I can find it. Is it over here? This is from 1970. We have always watched. We are the watchers and the protectors, and you have never been alone. We tend you carefully as a gardener tends his beloved plants. We are concerned over your growth and your nourishment. We have always given you paths to understanding. You are in a period of development, and we do care in a way that you cannot now understand. And that again, that was Seth 2 speaking about that. So, he says here, untranslatable knowledge is difficult, for to you we are alien, yet we have seated you God. So that's Seth 2. So this whole thing with Seth and probably it's connected in ways we don't understand yet to the whole UFO phenomenon. What we see, I think, is a shadow of what it really is, the UFO, whatever UFOs are. And I think they're not one thing, because I do think, and Seth says also, some are from different planets and some are from different dimensions. And he talked about the pyramids, too, a little bit. But if you want to ask a question or you want me to say at the pyramids, what he said?
Well, we're coming up on the break in about, I think, 2 minutes. So what I'd like to cover, like one of my questions for after the break is does Seth tell us about the organization of the universe, how it's structured, all the different layers of spirituality and physicality? Does Seth go into that material about how the universe was formed and is structured?
Seth goes into how reality is created, and he talks about it through consciousness units and electromagnetic units. He talks about what he calls Framework 1, which is physical reality, and Framework 2, which is non-physical reality. I don't know if he goes into like numbers, like the fifth dimension this and the sixth dimension or seventh dimension. If he did, that was something that didn't stick in my mind. I'm not saying he didn't. He might have touched upon it somewhere or somewhat, but it wasn't a major part of what I know about it.
Okay, that's okay. We'll stick with what you know, because we're dealing with, what was it, 25 books and 15 years of information. So at least, right?
And even more than that, yeah.
So we'll focus on what part you know, because that's what we want to do. Okay, and what else? We have about a couple minutes. What else would you like to cover before the commercial break? And then we'll take a 5 break.
Okay.
No, 5 minute break now.
Okay.
Bill, 5 minutes. Or listening.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
Would be me, Wild Bill Samsel.
Who
evil lurks in the halls of Washington. Well, that would be me, Wild Bill Samsel, your host of the Samsel Report. Join me for Wild Bill's Headline Roundup every Saturday night, right here on Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha, everyone, and I hope you can hear me. We are back. This is the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with your host, Janet Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin, and our special guest, Barrie-Gellis. And before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on freedomslips.com and make your donation $1, $100, whatever you can spare is greatly appreciated. We do thank you very much for your donation. And Thomas Becker, can you hear us?
Oh, of course.
Are there any specials this week?
No, man, there ain't. I just want to encourage everybody to go ahead and get the archives, $5 a month, and you can't beat it. You can get this show tomorrow and hear it again. So good.
Cool. Excellent, great, thank you. So, Sasha, anything to say for Barrie?
Just realizing this has got through lots of notes to recognize our interest in extraterrestrials, and we want to know what Seth said about the ETs and about Agartha too, if you said anything like that. Thank you.
Right. So I was asking to hear a little bit more about the like the cosmology of the universe according to the Seth material, what you know. If you don't know it, then you don't know it. But
well,
how is he saying that we came to be? How did life come to be? How did 3D reality
I'll answer as the best I can, which would be that the whole idea of how we came to be involves linear time, a beginning and an end. And before and after, but somehow the time is simultaneous, and there's no beginning or end. So the concept of when we came to be, somehow that doesn't make sense when it comes to true how we came to be somehow. But I know Seth did say, but yet we all have to talk in linear terms because that's all we know. I mean, everything is based in linear reality, before and after, start and end, and things. But according to Seth, there was things where there was consciousness, and consciousness felt the need to physicalize itself. For whatever, some kind of like a person dreaming has a need to wake up or something. So, and that would be my understanding of how the universe or whatever came to be. That that would be whatever physically what they would refer to as the Big Bang, which I don't think ever happened at all, the way we say. But in any case, that there was consciousness that needed to express itself. Now, then you go back, where did that consciousness come from? And then we're thinking in linear terms. And it's just hard to get in, non-linear reality. All we know is linear terms. That's all we don't know. It's like if we were fish and somebody was trying to talk to us about, flying in something called an atmosphere, and you can move, or something like that. It would be it's just out of our realm of understanding. But I know
right. It's just like our little window on reality, and that's all we're doing is reporting what we see in our little window.
Okay, it's hard for me to hear you. Something about a window, I heard.
That's okay.
Sorry.
He said our window in reality. Back here, honey. I don't know what he said. Say that again. I'll translate. He wants to just add 2 cents.
No,
just try again, honey.
Okay, these are just for me. It seems what Seth's saying is very much in line with sort of the universal paradigm that reflective people in every culture tend to get. That there's a source which is undifferentiated, and then by some kind of divine play or lila, it divides up, and so that finitude and infinity are, of course, just another one of those dichotomies that come from this play in the beginning of lila. And Buddhism says the same.
Yeah, but Seth would say,
says, one of my teachers, Ken Kai, says the same.
Seth would say and has said that he calls it all that is, and instead of God, doesn't matter what term. But he said it's not perfect and it's learning. God, it's all that is learning itself, and we are its little explorers. So it's learning from us, and we're learning from it. And according to Seth, when we die, we don't evaporate into some oneness. That we never lose our personality. We don't lose our individuality. We don't get swallowed up into any kind of vast nothingness. So that's different than some philosophies.
Yes,
some ideas.
Very different.
So we always retain our individuality. You're saying?
Yes.
Well, the whole idea of all.
He said, no matter how
you're here
far
now,
you go,
it has to be always.
He said, no matter how far away you go from physical reality, you'll never forget the smell of a Thursday afternoon sitting on your porch or something like that. That nothing is lost, and you don't get swallowed up, and we're an important part of everything. And when it comes to the universe, because I don't know the number answer in math. According to Seth, there's an infinite number of realities, of universes. He calls them probable realities, and these exist simultaneous, and it involves our past, what we call past and future, and it also involves like if I'm going to leave my house at 1:00, let's say, and then the phone rings, do I stop and answer the phone, or do I leave the house? So I would then, outside of linear time, that we're only half here in physical reality, and simultaneously we're in this nonlinear zone. And so we could explore, well, what's going to happen if I answer the phone? What's going to happen if I leave at 1:01, at 1:02, at 1:03? And then we choose to act, on what we already know will most probably happen. But each possibility continues as its own universe. So if I choose to leave at 1:05, if something different would have happened at 1:04, then that's going to continue on. And 1:03, there are an infinite number of universes that keep coming into existence. And this would be behind, like, what we call the expansion of the universe. If the universe keeps expanding, that there's an infinite number of universes that keep coming into existence via consciousness.
So is that something that's part of the? Is that something that's part of the observer participant? That if they ponder, what happens if I leave at 1:02, 1:03, 1:04, or is that just automatic because a choice popped up? Answer the phone or not answer the phone. How did those alternatives get created?
Automatic through our interaction. We would have a choice. Whatever we do, we have free will. So we choose. We create whatever I guess if you want to start from, let's say, a being born point, that we would choose to be born to a certain family in a certain situation because we feel we need to learn something or remember something. And then we live our lives, and as we live with our free will and interaction on the physical plane, things just come up every day. It's unavoidable. It's like life. Anything comes up. But according to Seth, there are no accidents, and everything that happens to us is agreed upon telepathically and subconsciously. And every choice that we don't physicalize does exist. It does get created and occurs in its own universe. And to those universes, any one of those, we are the non-physical probable choice. Like if you were going to be a dancer or a doctor, I'm just breaking it up really simply into two things. You chose to be a doctor, but the universe in which you chose to be a dancer exists. And that whole life, that just continues. And then you make your own choices in that universe, and that spurs more infinite number of universes. But multiply that by infinity. It's like every event that could possibly be occurs in a reality, in a universe, and we choose one of them to have as our experience, and the other ones are ongoing. And if you add to that dream realities that continue and don't stop, so in the dream, we have decisions we have to make, and those create more universes, and you go to sleep in the dream, and those dream realities. It's just, I can't explain it, but it's just infinite times infinite universes. And that, I believe, is what's behind the idea of the expanding universe and what they call dark energy or dark matter. Somehow those are all tied together. I think dark energy expands things. So,
are there those that want us to focus on their reality and make it more of the operating system, like those who proselytize to get us to believe what they believe, their religion, their politics? Is that type of action creating a focus which manifests that reality as the operating system for more people as they get convinced that that's the reality that's real?
I'm not, again, I'm just a little underwater again, sorry. But if we
consensus reality, she's talking about consensus.
Consensus reality would be wherever you're sharing things. By definition, if all this is true, by definition, it's consensus. If by happening, it would be agreed upon by those who are experiencing it. And there would also be according to Seth. No, I hear echo. But according to Seth, there's communication between probable realities.
We tried using just the mic on the computer to see if we could all hear each other better. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. It comes and goes, but that was good. I heard that sentence.
Excellent. Okay, so we're talking about probable realities, dreams, and simultaneous.
Yeah, probable reality.
And so forth. So,
probable reality. Our reality, what we see as reality, isn't really what it appears to be. It's really a strung together, different probable realities strung together. But according to Seth, as I was saying before, we're not always here physically. It's like we're flickering in and out. And every time we pop back into reality, each instant, we bring with us a past and a probable future. So the past seems to be continuous as the present seems to be continuous. But it's not really. And so when we pop into reality, again, according to Seth again, we're creating the objects we see. We just do it instantly, each instant, so it appears to always be there, like the chair, the TV set. So if you have 5 people in a room, there's really 5 TV sets all superimposed on each other that we each see. So we have the common experience of seeing one TV set in the room, telepathically agreed upon. And we create it well enough, looking like the same object, so we could focus, we could function properly in that way. But so when someone throws a ball to somebody else in the field, what actually would be happening would be that ball would be constantly recreated every instant in a little different location that would give the appearance to our physical senses that this ball is actually flying through the sky. It's like the motion picture. It looks like somebody's really moving, but it's really a flickering of individual photos. And so this is sort of tied into what reality is and what the universe is as well. So we would telepathically agree what the objects are going to look like, where they're going to be, telepathically agree on the events, and what we're going to do. If two people are having a fight and it's everybody saying something 1/2 a second later, we would still be in telepathic communication outside of linear time, in which case we would still know, well, I said this, what's the ramifications of that to this? And you could travel years in the future of what could happen. Then you just come back to that moment, which would be seem like you just saying, well, then you go to hell also. And it would seem like, nothing passed. You just said that in response to what the other person said. But you could have had this whole nonlinear inner experience that, gave yourself the approval that, yeah, it's okay to say that. And that's sort of my understanding of reality and telepathic.
So we're all simultaneous. So with that concept, we can change the past?
Yeah, changing the past would be, again, I don't understand it fully because it's sounds so crazy. But it's an emotion. It's via emotions. I know. If you go back and emotionally, you envision it or imagine that something different occurred. Let's say your parents abused you, and then you re-experiencing it. And that what would it be like if they didn't abuse me, and if I wasn't, how would I be? How would I feel? That I think would be one way of changing the past. And I know there's another way.
So you could reprogram the past by imagining a life where you're saying that you can go back and
alternate scenario.
We do that in psychology.
Oh yeah, in psychology, would be, but there'd be more real ramifications of it. But let me give this example, and let's see if this ties into what I just said. But like let's say in the dream state. Well, in the dream state, we go all over the place, time and space. But you can meet your own self, a younger version of yourself. So let's say, Janet, you go to bed and you meet your 10-year-old self in the dream, and you tell your 10-year-old self how great violins are. Then you wake up and you're here, in 2016, and your 10-year-old self wakes up in whatever year that is, and your 10-year-old says, has this great feeling for violins and says to your mother, can you buy me a violin for my birthday? So the mother buys you a violin for the birthday, which never happened before. But to you, it'll come to you as a memory, like, hey, you know what? I just remembered when I was 10, my mother bought me a violin. So that would be a way of also changing the past, that it comes to us as like memories that we just suddenly realize. Hey, I just remembered that. And that would be another version of changing the past.
Can you set that up as an experiment and do it intentionally? Like maybe write that down in a book. I'm going to go in the past and ask my mother to buy me a violin and tell my 10-year-old self that violins are great.
I would say I was talking about it, like meeting in the dream state, but an imaginative state, a meditative state, any state would do it. What we think of as the past, like I think of the past, something that always has happened, as the present, like with the ball flying through the air, it seems like it's just flying through the air. But the same way that ball flying through the air is pieced together, flicker by flicker, our past memories are the same. They're put together, flicker memory by flicker memory, if you will. And so when things
it's obvious the memory exists right now. That's where the memory is. It's right here, right now. It's not in the past. It's here now.
It's here now, but the now part is the important thing. It's here now, but now is not this just ocean of of something that's happening now. What we perceive as now is this flickering of now that gives us to our physical senses. It gives us the appearance of this expansiveness that's just here, like the TV set is always here. It's just in front of you.
Yeah, it's not static.
But it's not there. It's just being
dynamic.
recreated over and over again. And the past is also being recreated over and over again. So what we remember of the past, you remember your birthday party in the sixth grade, you're recreating that in each instant. You're creating that over and over again also.
Yeah, got it.
Is that a reason why prophecy doesn't really work very well when people prophesize things that this is going to happen on such and such date and time, that people who don't want that to happen might focus on an alternative reality, and then that initial reality doesn't happen with the negative thing? Is that what happens?
Well, with the future is always fluid because of free will. So something that seems like probably would happen. You could say when it comes to predictions, I believe, the future, it's a probability. So if you could say right now there's a good probability that who knows, you're gonna win lotto, you're gonna hit by car or whatever it is. We have free will, so that can always change. But what it does do is, this is why I believe we have different memories of things. It's not always why I just remember it differently. I have changed the experience that you were wearing the red dress when we went to the, when I first saw you at the deli, and you were wearing blue dungaree shorts. And, I just think, you don't remember it right, what's wrong? But it could be, and I think it is, that I just changed it. In my memory of it, in my past, you were wearing the red dress. And in your past, you were wearing the blue shorts. So I think that explains those differences. And same thing with police reports. Supposedly when people take...
Structure.
What was that?
Can we use this concept to cure diseases?
I'm sorry, say that
again?
How
can we cure... Can we use this concept of, we're creating this in our mind and it's always being created. Can we change our bodies so we no longer have a disease? Like a lot of people now are coming down with cancer.
Totally. According to Seth, our bodies are reflections.
How do they do that?
Our bodies are reflections of our beliefs, our health. So, you could, through imagination, through meditation, giving yourself suggestions for that's only five minutes a night when you go to bed. I'm good, my body's good, or my foot is healing, my foot is healed. Or you could try to understand, why is your foot hurting you? Well, it's hurting you because you feel you're getting no place in life. So you want to you got to connect the belief to the physical malady, and then if Seth is correct, it will change. And so same thing. So it's a specific belief to a specific malady.
So Jane Roberts,
and it's also a general belief. To like they said. You could just if we're creating our body anew each instant, it means the body is not just sick, but we're recreating it sick each instant. So you want to just recreate it, so it's not sick. But it would be understanding the beliefs behind it and also giving the suggestion. Because when we sit there and it looks like we're just daydreaming or thinking about when is the bus going to come, we're doing self-talk. We're saying things to ourselves all the time. I'm going to give negative things. Life is bad. I don't deserve anything. Whatever it is. So that self-talk that's going on all the time, right below the surface, is affecting our health, affecting the way our body is, affecting people and events we attract. So we want to change the self-talk to a positive message, because you can't hold two opposite messages, at one time. So people could find positive things to tell themselves. I like the phrase, I am good and my body's good and everything is okay. That's something that works for me. And to try and go to sleep for about 5 or so minutes, and saying my blood is good, my whatever. And go through different body parts and say how it's good and healthy. I'm good and healthy, and my body is good and healthy, and everything is okay. And variations of that, focusing on different parts. And then during the day, I'm sorry. Yeah?
I was just going to ask you, do we die because we believe in death and we're creating
dying
it?
is something that everybody's going to die. Per physical reality, part of physical reality is physical death. We chose physical reality, creating that, well, there's going to be the appearance of death. Physical matter dies and is vulnerable. And that's how we learn not to harm others, and we learn how to act on our compassion, because people can be hurt, and things can happen. Dying is not like a failure. It's just, it's an inevitable part of physical existence. And now maybe we could live for 200 years or a certain amount of years. I think the limit of it could be longer than it is now. But the idea of physically dying is part of the reason we created physical reality in the first place. We already had immortality, if you will, in the non-physical reality. You already really can't be harmed in the non-physical reality. You could fly, we wanted something different, so we created physical reality for its differences. And a lot of people, in New Age movement, people put down the differences and, physical reality is an illusion and you got to rise above it and you got to realize, you can't really hurt anybody or you can't die. Those are things that are true, but they're not important, because what's important is to learn from physical reality or you wouldn't be here. Anybody who doesn't want to be alive, I believe, would just die, would just be dead. I remember once when I was 15, I was reading a thing, it was called The Trial and Death of Socrates, and it was like a Plato thing. And in it, he convinced me that there was no reason to be alive or something. I don't remember what it was. But at that instant, I got this really bad pain in my abdomen, and I realized, and I said, no, I want to live, I want to live. And I realized then, at 15, that we're alive because we want to be alive. And it ties totally into Seth years later when I had this, and ties into a lot of philosophies. If nobody wants to be alive, then you wouldn't be. We're alive because we want to be alive. That's why suicide is not really needed. If you really wanted to die, you'd be dead. And the reason there's no
So there are
death
other
of the
beings.
self. I'm sorry, the self doesn't die. The physical body dies.
Right. So what I wanted to dissect this a little bit more, because there are other beings. We interview people, and there are stories of it and historical records of other beings like the Anunnaki and the gods and things that live to be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years old. So what is making one species live to be called the immortals while another species dies? And is it how much is our beliefs, does our beliefs create that? Because we're told that we get so many X amount of years, and we're acting that out on some level. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And even what you said, we might get 200 years. Those, to me, are beliefs. And we're at the time in time where we can look at those beliefs and make a conscious choice that I'm not done with my life at 50 to 100 years or even 120 years, that there's more to do, and it's time to shift those beliefs. That's just my thought.
Yeah, well...
What does Seth say about that?
Yeah, it was funny. One of the quotes I'm trying to look for, he specifically talked about that idea of immortality and how it was tied into space travel, that when they would come back, it would be like 100 years, 50 years later, but they wouldn't look any older. So that would give that the idea of immortality. Because Seth believes that with the kind of like the ancient astronaut theory, that all the Olympics and all those things are just people's version of space travelers, and translated as best as they can. So yeah, we create our physical bodies. And we're on the physical plane now. If you are a being that doesn't really need a physical body anymore, this whole idea of what we're talking about is doesn't really count. It's like how long are you going to take a shower or something? It would be you would be able to create your body and then leave it or just create it or uncreate it. And of course, it's a whole different relationship to the body. As physical beings, as people, we're using the body as a vehicle, part of our soul. It's a part of us to learn movies about reality creation and Flash and those other things. But once we move on outside of the reincarnation cycle, then we're just involved in systems where this whole issue of life and death and immortality just wouldn't come up. We're all immortal right now. What's not immortal is the physical body. So it's a... I'm also trying to find...
So what does Seth say about where we go when we die? What happens? Is that
about when we die?
Place we go?
When we die. When we die, we create our environment. We create where we go. Kind of like in that movie, the Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come.
Yes.
When you die, like now, we create our reality. We create our environment. We create your living room. We create the chair. We create everything. It's the same thing when you die. You create your death landscape. And then if you create like a negative one, or like something that somebody will come along and tell you you don't have to do this anymore. But you would have just more freedom of creation. It's kind of like being conscious in the dream state. I think the closest we would come to it, closest to the death state, would be like the dream state, but being lucid and conscious. That there's no, that you make, like with karma, choosing to be reborn, you choose that. There's no punishment. You have to do this because of that. But you decide, but your whole self decides, taking all your selves in all time periods, your like overall experiences, including your own, what you need to learn or remember. So if somebody is like a killer, let's say, in this lifetime, he killed 15 people, I don't think he doesn't have to come back and be killed himself, I don't think, or to suffer or to have a loved one killed. I think he could come back and become a beloved doctor that saves thousands of lives, because the lesson he would have to remember would be how valuable life is and how important life is. So we give ourselves the lessons we need, that we believe we need to learn, and then we choose to be born in that situation. So somebody in the abusive situation could be born into an abusive house, and of course there's infinite number of reasons. But one reason might be maybe in a past lifetime they were they didn't have to think too much. They were just given a lot of things and heaped a lot of praise, and they lost touch with the importance of certain things, and that they needed to experience some sort of suffering to remember that. Now, that's just, I'm making this up. That's one possibility, but there would be reasons why anything you were born into, there would be reason for it. But at the same time, anything that you learn through suffering could have been learned without the suffering. But it's because sometimes you think, well, suffering might make the lesson stick more, more lasting lesson. And also, any choice, reasons you came here to learn something, we do have free will, and that could be changed also at any time. Also, if you're born into an abusive house, that's agreed to by the parents, and they're learning something. They're learning not to be abusive. The only way you could learn not to be abusive is for somebody to be willing to accept your choice to abuse or not to abuse. So kind of built into the system of harming others is always giving that person, the only way they could face that choice in physical reality is by you willing to accept their choice to harm you. But there's no other way they could learn to act on their compassion unless somebody is willing to be hurt by them. And they would be willing to be hurt for their own reasons. Somebody who believes they're a bad person, maybe they'll get robbed on the street, or money is bad, or whatever the belief is, they would attract someone who's going to rob them. But what's really going on is I'm giving you the choice to rob me or not because I believe I'm bad and deserve to be hurt. And you are giving me the choice, you robber. You could say no. You're not obligated to hurt me just because I attracted you. You could say no, go find somebody else if you still want to be hurt. But I realize now I don't want to do this. So there's this constant telepathic, interaction going on. But one of the major things about Seth that we started with that I didn't mention is that the mechanism of reality is that nobody is a victim. This doesn't mean people are excused to do whatever they want. This doesn't mean, like you said Nat, it's not okay that somebody's starving because they chose to starve. You still have to help them. But it does mean that there are reasons why you're in the situation you're in. And it's not blame. It's an explanation. It's that once you could see a connection, that you're not just randomly a victim, you can then start asking yourself questions. Well, why did this happen to me? Why did I go along with it? Subconsciously at first. Why did I attract it? What am I getting out of it? Like, for example, now I realize that I believe I was bad, and I believe I should be punished. And that's what I'm getting out of it. I change that belief, I will never be in that situation again. So it's that type of interaction with reality creation or being born, of life and death. We all choose our exact moment and method of death, according to this philosophy, that nothing happens by accident. So if you walk out of your room at 1:01 p.m. and a brick falls and hits you on the head, you did that in order for that brick to hit you on the head. That was your chosen method of dying. But it could be many, who knows the reason why. Some people like to go out with a big bang. Some people like to go out in their sleep. And there's always lessons for other people. We often hear when somebody dies, like the family members left behind, they start an organization, they start a fund, they start a charity. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why. Any way a person changes after somebody dies is one of the reasons why they agreed to that person dying and why that person chose to die also, besides their own reasons. But somebody might need to be pushed onto a more spiritual path, or to be pushed into, helping others in some way. And, I want to die when I'm 22, and you really want to help other people, and we're going to get together here. I'll die when I'm 22 for my reasons, and this is going to spur you on to help people like you need to do and want to do. Those type of agreements where we get away from blame or punishment. We just look for explanations and mechanisms that are involved. I hope that makes sense.
That's very much like in therapy, we call it intentionality. It's the assumption that your intentions, conscious or unconscious, are manifest in what you get, including how you die, and that if you assume that you've chosen whatever you confront as useful to you in your growth and expansion, then it's all good.
Yeah, and then you could start asking yourself, why did this happen? If you believe there's no reason and it's just random and whatever, you really are cutting off your path. I mean, there's nothing you could go from that. Life is random, and things don't happen for any reason. You're stuck with that until you believe otherwise. You won't look for reasons. You won't look for answers. So everything you said I agree with, and the mechanism of what you said is that it opens up the willingness and the awareness that you could question, why did this happen? And that and you'll find answers. It's not just, no reason. But people get afraid of that idea because they think it's either blaming themselves or blaming others, or they think it's their fault somehow. And blame and fault have nothing to do with this. It's like you don't blame the clouds for raining, kind of. They fill up with the liquid and they rain. And the mechanism of reality creation is the same, is the process of making these choices. It's not blame, it's learning.
Exactly. It's what you said about using existential guilt, which is merely how you can assessment of how you can improve your performance, instead of falling victim to neurotic guilt, which is just making yourself feel bad without realizing that you're enjoying making yourself feel bad.
Yeah, except I'm not sure about existential guilt exactly, but it's guilt specifically. I hit you over the head with a bat or with a stick, or I punch you, and then I'm going to do it again. And the violations and natural guilt would be right before I hit you again. Something is telling me not to do it. There's an inner tugging, according to Seth, and that inner tugging, like an instinct or an inner tugging, is natural guilt, what he calls natural guilt, not artificial guilt. And he said the animals have this subconsciously or unconsciously. They're already there, and we are supposed to learn this to consciously choose what the animals already know. And so it's a feeling of, I should not do this again. He called it natural guilt, and he distinguished it from artificial guilt. Like he said, a lie could sometimes be
guilt.
Artificial guilt or natural guilt. A lie could sometimes not be a violation, and a lie sometimes could be a violation. It depends, again, like you were talking about intent. It does depend upon your intent and the effect of it. And the violation would be of your own nature. You're violating your own innate love, compassion, and goodness when you harm someone else. You can make an argument you're violating the other person, but some people, but you say, well, that person chose it, so they agree to it even though it harms them. But the violation is actually of your own nature. You're violating nature and your own nature. And natural guilt, that's
What
whatever
makes
you
people
want to
do
call
that
it,
so frequently?
is the inner tugging.
What do you think is causing people? What do you think is causing people to violate their own nature so extremely these days?
I think we're all born loving, compassionate, and good. I strongly, fully believe that. But when your love starts to cause you pain, you're born in an abusive house and you tell the truth and you get hit, or you feel loved and vulnerable and then you get beaten, you get lied to. You're saying, wait a minute, I don't trust this. I'm not going to tell the truth. I can't be. If I'm nice, I'm going to get hurt. So we put up walls blocking us from our innate love, compassion, and goodness. It comes out in other ways. Many, many, many abused people love animals forever. This great, great love, because that's where the love is being channeled, because they can't give it to other people, or only a little bit, because they're afraid of being hurt, which is natural because that's what you've experienced. So I believe that people, when you get hurt, and if you look into most bad people, or Hitler or anybody, they've been hurt. They've been some type of abuse in their life, either neglect or physical abuse or sexual abuse, emotional abuse. That's the background of most rapists, murderers. I think people who are like Trump, these real rich people who lost touch with these things, and also dictators and other things. I think that it doesn't go away. It's still there, but they learn early on at some point not to trust it because it's going to hurt them, and they put up a wall, and then it expresses itself in other ways, and it's held in.
How can someone return to their true nature of compassion and love, and away from their programming?
One way, is to realize that it's believe that it's still there, believe that they're good and that other people are good, and to realize that there's reasons why things happen. As horrible as something was, on some level, they agree to it, which doesn't excuse. I have to always emphasize this because it gets people upset. They think it excuses what the other person did. It does not excuse what the other person did at all. All it does is explain it. But it makes you no longer a victim in the quote-unquote old-fashioned way of thinking of being a victim. You're still on one level, you could say you're a victim because in physical reality, people harm other people without them wanting to be harmed, so they could say you're a victim. But not on the deeper level that we're talking about now. So I think if you could find a way to believe that you're good, and by extension others are good, even if they don't
there are
act
no
that way.
victims.
I was to say, if you could find a way to believe you're good, how could you believe you're good? Is that what you're asking?
What I was saying is, so there are no victims. Yet a lot of people go through life in victimhood, but on some level they've chosen, their parents and their circumstances, and then they get angry when you see.
I'm sorry. I want to interrupt you for a minute. I first would say that the term victim is a loaded term. And I would say there are definitely, on one level, on the physical reality level of things, there are definitely victims. That's what I was trying to distinguish. Anyone who gets hurt without consciously wanting to be hurt and without having an expectation of being hurt, to me, that person is a victim. You can be a victim also of a hurricane, a victim of a crime, a victim of war. But it doesn't mean that you didn't also on this inner, deeper, expansive level, choose to experience that event. On that deeper, inner, expansive level, there are no victims. But on this physical level, it's a loaded term because it has a lot of different meanings to other people. But I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that person was a victim of the hurricane or that person was a victim of abuse. But you have to, if you're going to use that term, you still have to remember at the same time, it's also something that you were co-created and were part of for other reasons. So it doesn't end that I was a victim and this happened to me and it was totally random or out of my control or whatever. Yes, it could be totally out of your physical control. It could be a child. It's out of his or her physical control to be, beaten or sexually abused. But that doesn't still mean on inner expansive levels there weren't reasons why the whole thing was agreed to. And the soul of a child or an infant is as ancient as the soul of, Mother Teresa or Moses or, any adult or grandfather or anybody. The soul is in an age. So with the term victim, I try to stay away from it because it, on both sides, on the side of people who like New Age folks and people who don't believe in New Age folks, everybody gets upset with that word because it gets misused. Right. So
Yet people are acting out in their lives because of somewhere in their lives they were in a victim role, and then they projected the victim becomes the victimizer, and that's a continuous. How does the person who feels victimized prevent themselves becoming the victimizer?
Well, hurt people is an expression. Abuse people, hurt people. You have hate in you. I hate, if somebody hates their parents, I hate my parents. I happen not to be abused, but let's say I was abused. I hate my mother when she sexually abused me. I'm not allowed to hate my mother. I got hit when I said that, and I was beaten, and now it's repressed. But I still have that hate in me. So it's repressed. And that repressed hate explodes into violence. So now another woman comes along, psychologically speaking, and in my mind, it gets channeled onto that person. And I'm going to beat her because I hate her. Subconsciously I hate her. I'll come up with reasons. She didn't cook the food right. She didn't do this right. She didn't do that right. So I'm channeling the hate. So in order for me to get rid of that hate, that's where the self-awareness comes in. I have to first look to get rid of it. And I have to understand that's not nature. It's not my nature to hate, even though I feel it strongly. It comes from someplace, and then a person has to be aware of what happened to them as children. When you're a child, they say, if somebody picks you up, it affects your whole life. Or if somebody has a mobile on top of them in the crib, and their eyes could follow it around, that affects their whole intellectual development. So if that's true, imagine how just hearing fighting in the background feels, hearing broken glass when you're that age. Then imagine being hit or being thrown or pushed or beaten at that age when you're still in the crib. You can see the effect is astounding. And then we tell children to forget it. And while if adults slapped an adult across the face at work, it would be a crime. It would be horrible. It would be uncalled for. It would, but children can get hit that way all the time, not even in an abusive, recognized abusive way, but we're telling children to swallow such anger and rage instead of first of all saying, express how you feel. It's okay to be angry. It's natural. When you get upset, somebody hurts you, well, of course you're going to be angry. So it's all this like crazy teaching that's not fair and we don't even do it for adults. So this affects these people, us people who are older than children. We have all this in us, and we justify what we do because everybody justifies their behavior. So, people hit their kids or they, beat other people. They do what we're talking in the negative. They, go off to war on both sides. Both of them feel that the other side is evil. So let's kill them. The cycle could only be broken really one person at a time unless somebody goes around trying to teach people. And I guess people have done that in the past, and they were put to death. But
I was just wondering if Seth came up with something that we can do that's more effective than one person at a time, because it seems like we might reach critical mass and destroy this whole planet before we get to the point where we wake up to, save the planet.
Oh, there could be whole universal giving. The Israelis could give the international community the Temple Mount, and the United States could give Cuba Guantanamo.
Well, what I'm saying is that the Seth material cover any kind of possible resolution for this.
This is the
resolution. And the cycle of dysfunction.
You can't push something on people. The Seth material has come into this ongoing situation. But all of us, every day, are relying. One person, what one person does is crucial to our lives every single day. When you're driving a car, all the people driving in the opposite direction are not hitting into you. One person is making a difference all the time. Yeah. And it's nothing. It's not trivial, and it's not minor. It could end and there's millions of people. And if you have millions of people doing something, that's going to affect millions of people. But there's no magic button to push, or there's no way you could make somebody do something that their belief system won't allow them to do. You can't force help on somebody to narrow it down to one thing. There's a homeless person on the street. If his beliefs are such that he needs to be homeless, you give him a lot of money, he'll go through it in a week or in a month. If you can only help people who are ready to be helped, and once they're ready to be helped, then your help would help. But you can't go to somebody. I am going to force you to be helped by me, or I'm going to force you not to be violent, or I'm going to be. But by setting an example, and we do affect, like I said, the drivers who don't hit into us is affecting us. The people who cook food and don't put poison in it. I mean, there's good and bad happening all the time. It's a matter of course how individuals are always making the difference. But you have to be patient, and if things do go in a negative way or destroyed, I think it's happened other times in other Earths, and we just try again. One of the things that I remember it was said about.
We're running out of time.
I'm okay.
I wanted to just cover. That's okay. I just want to cover: is physical reality real or not? The doctrine of both. Does that mean?
That's what I'm saying. We talked about physical reality is a real aspect of reality. It's not just an illusion. That's what some people say. It's not real. It's just an illusion. It doesn't count. But we created physical reality in order to learn how to act in harmony with our compassion. And we needed they needed the people to be able to be hurt, harmed, and suffered, as well as joyful and happy, to learn that. So physical reality is one aspect of reality. It's a real aspect of reality. It's not the only aspect, though, of reality. But it's not simply just an illusion, because that implies, it's not that important. And we're in physical reality to learn that it's not real, to learn that we're not here for that. We already knew that. We're here to learn to help others and to create reality. And physical reality is the only place that you could create reality like this. And in one of the Seth areas, he said, people who choose physical reality experience are like the bravest ones. That it's such a difficult dimension to live through. I'm saying it that way. Yeah. So it's not an illusion. It's not what it appears to be to the five senses. And the illusion is one of these loaded words because it seems like not real because it's an illusion. Seth calls it a camouflage reality. I say it's a reality of appearance. Things appear to be a certain way, but they're not. But because, from another perspective, they appear to be a certain way, or because we congeal physical reality with a certain camouflage to make the objects appear to be what they are real in their own right as well. Like a baseball game. There couldn't be baseball unless people agreed on the rules, or else, there'd be no bases, there'd be no balls and strikes. You couldn't have the game. So you could say the game isn't real, but then you couldn't have the game. You can't play baseball. So I don't mean to minimize life as a game, but it's like that. It's like you couldn't have physical reality if you didn't have the rules of it. They just wouldn't exist anymore. And we created it. According to Seth, we created physical reality. And we didn't create it for no reason, and the reasons are the reasons I gave.
What was the most important message that Seth left us?
What's that?
What is the most important message of all that Seth material?
We create our reality.
What was the most?
I would say it's a lot. You create your own reality. There are no victims. There is no death. The way we think of it, people are good. There's not one really better than the other. We shouldn't harm other people. Love is like the substance of the universe. Love holds the universe together. Without love, it would just disintegrate. All those things are, are important. And Seth said you have the answers in you, and that was very important. You don't need me. If you ask a question, you already have the answer formulated somewhere inside you. And you really should go find it yourself. Because if I answer it, Seth, you're going to think you have the answer, but you only really have half the answer. That was very important. Everything I just said, crucial, very important to the Seth material and to everybody. And you don't need the Seth material. This is all natural within us. Everything that Seth said, we already have inside us. It's just a question of the pathway to it, And somebody could get it just by sitting on their porch, who doesn't know how to read somewhere. Somebody could get it in some kind of tribe, in some kind of jungle. You can get it in the city. You can get it anywhere, or through the Seth material. It's all
Barry, I find what you're saying is so inspiring, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank Jane, and I want to thank Seth. I really feel inspired. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, are there still Seth groups out there that people can attend? Are you still conducting one? What's going on?
No. Well, no. I used to have a Seth chat online, which we went over Seth different concepts and we discussed them. I posted but no, people should buy the books. People can make their own Seth groups up, and discuss it. There are Seth, Facebook pages. I have a Facebook page, but there's a fans of Seth is another page. And books, there's books of some class transcripts. There's books of transcripts of sessions leading up to the books. There are books, a lot of things were deleted from the books. Those are now books. They call it the personal sessions. I think the most important thing people could do is meet with people in their area and have Seth just discuss it. And you got to be brave to explore yourself and what your feelings are.
Thank you so much, Barry. How do people contact you? Do you have a website?
Through my email. Anybody can call me with any comment or question, or if they want the poetry book, Bargell, Bargell, Bargell at AOL.com. And anyone is welcome to contact me for any reason they want.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you so much.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.